She fell from over 14,000 feet. Both parachutes failed. Her body hit the ground at a speed no human being was supposed to survive. Doctors who examined her at the scene said survival was impossible. The injuries were catastrophic. The damage was too great. And yet, she woke up. And when the medical team tried to understand how she was still alive, they found something that no textbook had prepared them for. The thing that may have saved her life was not a surgeon, not a drug, not a miracle of modern medicine. It was a swarm of fire ants. Welcome back to the Medical Enigma. This channel exists for one reason: to explore the cases that make doctors stop, put down their charts, and ask out loud how this is even possible. Today, we are diving into one of the most bizarre survival stories ever documented in medical and emergency literature. A case where extreme trauma, insect venom, human physiology, and a set of events so improbable they feel fictional all collided at once. And here is what makes this story so fascinating. Even years after the incident, experts are still debating what truly saved her life. Was it luck? Was it biology? Or was it the pain itself? Let us start from the beginning. Her name is Joan Murray. In September of 1999, Joan was 47 years old, living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and working as a bank executive at Bank of America. By any measure, she was accomplished. A professional with decades of experience. A woman who had built a serious career in a demanding industry. But Joan Murray had another life outside the office. She was a skydiver, not a casual weekend thrill seeker, not someone who had jumped 3 times and called herself a skydiver. Joan had logged over 35 jumps. She had real experience, real training, real confidence in the sport. She was not a beginner. She knew the equipment. She understood the risks. She had done everything right on dozens of previous dives. That September morning, she geared up the way she always had, checked her equipment, boarded the plane, climbed to altitude. Nothing suggested that this jump would be different from any other. At over 14,000 feet above the ground, Joan Murray jumped. The freefall began normally, wind, speed, altitude dropping fast. Then Joan reached for her main parachute. It did not deploy correctly. The canopy malfunctioned. Instead of opening and catching air the way it was designed to, it twisted, tangled, and failed to slow her descent. Joan Murray was now in a crisis situation at thousands of feet above the ground, and she knew it. She activated her reserve parachute, the backup, the fail-safe that is supposed to save your life when everything else goes wrong. It also failed. Both parachutes gone. Joan Murray was now falling at approximately 80 miles per hour with no functional canopy and no way to stop. Think about that for a moment. 80 miles per hour. The speed of a car on a highway, directed straight at the ground. The human body is not designed to absorb that kind of impact. The forces involved are simply beyond what tissue and bone can withstand. Joan hit the ground. The impact was, by every physical calculation, unsurvivable. Joan Murray did not land on pavement. She did not land on concrete or rock. She landed on a mound. Specifically, she landed on a fire ant mound, home to a colony of Solenopsis invicta, one of the most aggressive invasive insect species in the United States. Fire ants do not wait. They do not assess the situation. When their colony is disturbed, they attack immediately, in massive numbers, and they do not stop. Within seconds of impact, hundreds of fire ants began stinging Joan Murray across her body. Each sting delivers a venom called solenopsin, a compound that causes an immediate burning, piercing sensation. 1 sting is painful. 10 stings are agonizing. Hundreds of stings simultaneously is a level of pain that is almost incomprehensible. Joan Murray, who had just survived a 14,000-foot fall, was now being attacked by hundreds of insects while lying motionless and critically injured on the ground. This was the moment that would later baffle physicians and researchers for years, because it may have been the very thing that kept her alive. Emergency responders arrived on scene and immediately recognized the severity of what they were looking at. Joan Murray had sustained fractures across her entire right side. Her right arm was shattered. Her right leg was broken. The impact had caused massive blunt force trauma throughout her body. She was conscious, but only barely. Her vital signs were unstable. She was losing ground fast. She was airlifted to Carolina's Medical Center, where the trauma team went to work. In the hours that followed, Joan's heart stopped. Not once, multiple times. She was resuscitated repeatedly. The surgical team performed emergency procedures to address internal injuries and stabilize her fractures. She fell into a coma. The medical picture was catastrophic: traumatic shock, multiple organ stress, cardiac instability. The body simply shutting down in response to an injury load it was not equipped to handle. And yet, through all of it, something in Joan Murray kept fighting. She did not die. Here is where the case becomes something more than a survival story. Here is where it becomes a medical enigma. When physicians began trying to reconstruct what had happened in those critical minutes between impact and the arrival of emergency services, they kept coming back to the ant stings. The theory, proposed and discussed by medical professionals who reviewed her case, goes like this. Joan Murray hit the ground at a speed that should have caused immediate fatal trauma. Her heart, under the shock of that impact, was in danger of stopping completely and not restarting. Then came the fire ants. The venom of Solenopsis invicta, delivered in massive quantities across her body, caused an extraordinary physiological response. The pain was overwhelming. And pain at that level triggers one of the most powerful survival mechanisms in human biology. The adrenal glands release adrenaline, epinephrine, the same compound that paramedics inject directly into the heart during cardiac emergencies. The theory is that the flood of adrenaline triggered by hundreds of simultaneous fire ant stings may have provided enough biochemical stimulation to keep Joan Murray's heart beating during those critical minutes when it otherwise would have stopped for the last time. Her own body, responding to the ant venom, may have administered a crude but effective emergency injection that no paramedic was there to give. Let that sit for a moment. The pain that should have been another layer of suffering may have been the very signal that kept her cardiovascular system functional long enough to be reached by emergency services. Now, it is important to be precise here. This is a theory. It is a compelling, physiologically plausible theory supported by what we understand about the sympathetic nervous system and the role of adrenaline in cardiac events. But medical science operates on evidence, and the evidence from a single case, however dramatic, does not constitute a clinical conclusion. What the physicians who reviewed this case agreed on is simpler but no less remarkable. They could not fully explain why Joan Murray survived. The injuries were incompatible with survival by standard medical logic, and yet there she was. Joan Murray spent 2.5 weeks in a coma. When she woke up, the road ahead was long. She required over a dozen surgeries, physical therapy, months of rehabilitation to rebuild strength in a body that had been broken and put back together piece by piece. The process was slow and painful and demanded everything she had, and she did it. Approximately 2 years after the accident, Joan Murray went skydiving again. Whether you find that inspiring or incomprehensible probably says something about you. But the fact is undeniable. The woman who fell 14,000 feet, who survived 2 parachute failures, who withstood hundreds of fire ant stings while lying broken on the ground, who had her heart stopped and restarted multiple times in a hospital trauma bay, eventually walked back to a plane and jumped again. The human will to return to something you love, even after it nearly killed you, is its own kind of medical phenomenon. Medicine is full of cases that defy what we think we know. Most of them are never reported. Most of them are whispered about in hospital corridors by physicians who have seen too much to be easily surprised, but who still find themselves at a loss for explanation. The case of Joan Murray is one of the rare ones that made it into the record. That got examined, discussed, and debated. That forced serious people to sit down and ask a genuinely uncomfortable question. Did the ants save her life? We do not have a definitive answer. We may never have one. But we do know this. The human body has mechanisms we are still mapping. Pain, which we spend enormous resources trying to eliminate, can also be a signal, a trigger, a survival response written into our biology by millions of years of evolution. Sometimes the thing that hurts you is also the thing that refuses to let you go. If this case made you think differently about how the body works, subscribe to the Medical Enigma. New cases every week, the ones that stay with you. See you next time.